Well, I've only been teaching at Svitlo School for a short period of time, 7 or 8 weeks. And initially, I approached the project with a strong awareness of the disruption many of the students would be facing in their lives in general, but specifically in their education. And that was my principal motivation for wanting to be involved, to help in a small but practical way. In fact, from the very first lesson, my focus changed. I was struck much less by the difficulties they face and much more by the students' intellectual curiosity, their pure desire to learn, both from me, but more importantly from each other as well. And despite everything going on around them, they seem to maintain a sense of normality and a positivity about the future that are remarkable, really. And that does make it extraordinarily rewarding to work with the Svitlo students. So I think we've got everybody back. So the government side, the team arguing for first, do we have an order that you're going to speak in? Who's
Yeah,
going to go
so I
first?
will be the first speaker, then Solomia will be the second, and Yana will and like make the last
The,
speech.
the summary then and the
Yeah.
last speech. Fabulous, thank you. And what about the opposition side? Who's going to go first?
The opposition side, I'm going to be the first, then Mary, and the last one would be Natalia.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Wonderful. So let's open the debate. This House believes that language is the foundation of cultural identity. We'll aim for about 3 minutes per speech, but we won't be too strict. But I think we need to sort of keep that in mind. And Julia, let's go to you to open, please.
So the language is one of the most powerful sources shaping human civilization. And today we're here to discuss the topic of a great importance that had a huge impact on the world over the centuries. It's the undeniable connection between language, culture, and national identity. And now I will provide some definitions of what we're going to talk about today. So, a nation is a group of people with shared history, traditions, and values. Culture is the expression of these values through art, customs, and beliefs. And finally, language is the tool through which culture is preserved and passed down. Language is not just words, it's the soul of a nation. To start off, I have some historical examples of how language impacts on us. The brightest and most relevant one I can think of is the history of Latin language that is now assumed to be a dead language. As centuries passed, people started using their local dialects, known now as Romance languages, such as Spanish, French, and Italian. And no more frequently than the original Latin language. And over time, Romance languages became more established, and Latin ceased to be spoken as a native language. By the Middle Ages, it was a language only used in medicine, academics, and churches, but not in real life conversations. A Latin language example shows us how by not using the language daily, a nation can be easily destroyed and replaced by other nations. And quite the same process is now happening to many countries that in the past were part of the Soviet Union, such as Georgia, Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, and Belarus, as their native languages are now under the pressure of Russia. As Russian propaganda and imperialism first penetrates with harmless statements, such as brother nations into the neighborhood countries, showing how similar we all are. And by providing Russian in countries, Russia makes innocent people forget their mother tongue that allows it to then control our native minds, thoughts, and erase cultural heritage. And these are just some of the examples that shows how language impact on the nation's identity. And later on, Salome and Diana are going to also cover the importance of language in literature, translation, and the uniqueness of nation. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, brilliant start, Yulia. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. And really helpful to give such clear definitions at the outset. It's a really great habit that many of you are getting into to give those really precise definitions. It's fantastic. Excellent start. Thank you very much. Juliana, let's go to you. I'm sure you're going to continue just as well.
Thank
Over
you.
to you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are debating the motion language is foundation of cultural identity. At the position, we disagree with this claim. But yes, language is important, but it is not the foundation of cultural identity. Let's start with a simple question. What makes a culture unique? It is just language? We do not think so. Culture is about traditions, values, history, food, art, music, and the way people live their lives. For example, culture can survive without a common language. Many cultures have lost their original language, but still exist today. Take the Irish people as example. In Ireland, only 1.7% of the population, that's mean more about 73,000 people, speak Irish on a daily basis. That's according to 2022, but about 90% of Irish people identify themselves as speakers of Irish culture through music, dance, history, and traditions. We also have another example, Jewish people, Jewish culture. For centuries, Jewish people spoke different languages, such as Yiddish, Ladino, Hebrew, but their cultural identity remains strong. Second one, people can share a language but have different identities. Let's talk about English language. There are about 58 countries in the world where English is official language, but that's not make their culture the same. For example, Americans, Australians, and British people all speak in English, but their cultures are completely different. The same goes for Spanish-speaking countries. That's about 20 countries in the world. It's Spain, Mexico, and Argentina have unique traditions and despise sharing a language. Third one, cultural identity is about belonging, not just words. Many people grow up speaking one language, but feel connected to a different culture. For example, millions of immigrants speak the language of their new country, but still hold on their original traditions, food, and beliefs. If language were a foundation, they would lose their cultural identity, but they don't. We also have just one example from India. In India, they have more and over than 1,020 different languages and dialects as well, but that doesn't stop people feeling a common cultural identity. So a small conclusion for me, you can lose a language but still be a part of culture. But if you lose traditions, values, and history, then the culture will truly disappear. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, you say that's it. I mean, that was a wonderful introduction, Juliana. Thank you very much. So let's just let Anastasia in. Fascinating, really fascinating, and it's humbling for me because we're here talking about language, and I'm very aware that none of you is talking about this in your first language, and I am, so I have the advantage. But it's extraordinary that you're able to express such complex ideas in second, third, I don't know, maybe fourth language for some of you. It's extraordinary. Juliana, that was a brilliant introduction. Thank you very much. Solomia, let's go to you to continue. I'm sure they'll continue in the same vein.
Hello everyone, my name is Salomia and I'm going to speak for the motion as the second speaker. And our first speaker, Yulia, already said about the connection between language, culture, and nation. So from the definitions, we see they are fully connected and we can't deny it. And now I wanted to consider why language defines who we are. So the language you speak defines who you are, your nationality, cultural background, and your values. So what's important for you? and it's a part of your personality. Why is that? Language has developed throughout history and reflects the uniqueness of the nation. And we can't say the opposite about it because it's true. And language is not just a set of words which we use for to express our thoughts. So it's every language has vocabulary with unique meanings that cannot be fully translated, and that's why it is important to emphasize the etymology of words. And then speaking about that, it means that it shapes the way we think, influencing our perspective of the world and how we understand things. And in this way, language directly impacts our mindset and defines our sense of reality. And here I want to think about one famous quote, which are now very famous, but I want to empathize on it. So the philosopher Lao Tzu said, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And now I think that it's not directly connected with our topic, but that we see here that all these things are about how we think, and language is a tool which we use to express our thoughts. So if those things are connected in such logical way, so we can surely say that the words which we use, it impact how how we think, and what are the cultural background, because culture is about values, and values it's about what important to us. So that's repeat itself, but it's very logical and a very interesting thing that to give you evidence on that, I want to give you example how then, for example, we translate something from one language to another, and we can't really express what they like the original meaning of something, because their culture, their they of art even, it can be translated because the language and culture is connected. So and the real example is and I guess it's negative example here, but we can keep silent about it, like Russian language, which is then they translate into Russian language is change the meaning, the original meaning, but in negative sense. And they why is that? Because their culture is about stolen things, stolen values, stolen history, and they try to do censorship on this to impact their citizens' thoughts. And that's very logical that their language will work like that. And that's why even in films, then we for example will watch in their language, and not next we will come back to the original. We will see that some words even they like they directly uh have another meaning and the main idea of the film or a book or whatever. So yeah, and I want to end up with the positive thing. For example, Ukrainian language, we have many very unique words, and they actually were the formulate from the our history. And now then we want to translate something from English, for example, or other languages. Word recognize that our translation is one of the most interesting and the most cool translation, because we have some unique things which really really works in another way. We don't change the meaning, but we add some some additional feelings to that, or something just from us, so just for our culture. And it works the same way with other language. Every language adds something from their culture, and culture is the people, like people who represent their culture and language. So yeah, and that's all factors just prove that language is a foundation of cultural identity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Salome. That was really fascinating. It's wonderful to hear you all thinking about language, which is a sort of an abstract idea, but thinking about it in such clear ways. And also, of course, as I hoped, this debate would encourage us to think about the connection between language and politics, which has been the case throughout history, and I think is a really important way of thinking about politics is to study it through the language. Great. Anastasia, by the way, no problem at all for being late, but I noticed the word you say detained, and it's quite an interesting use of language, because detained means to be held back, but in an English school, if you're in detention, it's because you've been really naughty. So Anastasia, I'm sure that wasn't the case, and you weren't held back at school because you were really naughty, but I just saw the word detained, and it was an interesting example of language. So we're glad you're here, even if you had been naughty and kept back at school, which I doubt. Fantastic. Let's go now, please, to Mary. You're going to speak second against the motion. Over to you, please.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mary and I'm standing for the opposition side. And now I want to give you a few arguments why language is not really the foundations of cultural identity. The first one, language changed, but culture remains. Language evolved over time, yet cultural identity persists. For example, modern English and vastly different Old English, but British and American cultural identities have remained strong. And similarly, Latin-speaking Romans no longer exist, but Italian, French, and Spanish cultures, which evolved from Latin, still thrive. The second one, cultural identity is shaped by history and geography more than language. For example, a country's past environment and shared experience define its identity more than language. And for instance, Switzerland has 4 official languages. It's German, French, Italian, Romansh, and Swiss identity is unified through history, governance, and traditions rather than a single language. So from that, we can understand that culture is a more broader concept than just a language. The third one, religious and philosophical beliefs bind cultures more than language. And many cultures are rooted in shared religious or ideological beliefs, even when members speak different languages. And the Slavic world, for example, includes diverse linguistic groups, but shares a strong cultural identity through common religious and social values. And I want you to give you an example of language being used as a justification for conflict in Russian invasion of Ukraine. And Russia claims that Russian-speaking Ukrainians are part of its cultural identity and uses it as an excuse to exert control over Ukrainian territory. However, Ukraine has a distinct cultural identity based on history, traditions, and national values, proving that language alone does not determine culture. But actually, it's not really a problem. For example, Canada, who has 2 major languages, English and French, and in some areas people don't know English at all. But it doesn't mean that France claims that this part of the population is French. So that's my argument.
Yeah, it's a really interesting again, and you touched there, Mary, on the way that language changes over time. I think that's a really fascinating part of this argument. So I thought you brought a really interesting dimension to that as well as touching on this connection between language and politics. Excellent. Juliana, yes, got you. Thank you very much. I will take your vote into account. So when I forget, which I will, at the end, Juliana's voting for the motion. Excellent. I think what I'm going to do, actually, because I always don't give the third speakers enough time, so I think we'll go straight to the third speakers, and then we'll open out, and we can have a bit more time to widen the debate. So, and I think that would be fair. So we're going to go now to Natalia. You're going to close the case against the motion.
Okay, 1 second.
Of course.
So, I'm Natalia. I'm standing against the motion. And this is my conclusion arguments. Culture is shaped by diverse factors beyond languages. While language plays a role in expressing culture, it's not the foundation. Culture is influenced by history, geography, religion, social norms, traditions, and even economic conditions. For example, communities that share the same language may have very different cultural practices due to different historical contexts. Language is not always tied to a culture. For example, many people in countries around the world speak English but have very different cultures. This shows that language alone does not create culture. To conclusion, I want to say that while language is an important cultural tool, it is not the sole foundation of culture and the identity. History, traditions, values, and shared experiences play a much greater role in defining a culture. Examples like Canada's peaceful bilingualism and Ukrainians' resistance to Russian linguistic claims prove that identity is shaped by more than just language. According to UNESCO, half of the world's 7,000 languages may disappear by the end of the 21st century, but that doesn't mean cultures will disappear. Therefore, cultural identity can grow even when languages change, evolve, or coexist.
Excellent. Natalia, thank you very much. What you were saying there reminded me of, there was a famous case, I think it was in the 1980s, but there was one Scottish language that was only spoken by two brothers. They were the two remaining speakers. And unfortunately, one of the brothers died, so the other had nobody to speak to in his language, and the language was not really written down, and unfortunately was lost. And there are a number of examples of that. So that point about languages disappearing, again, another fascinating part of this debate. Great. So let's go now to Jana, please, to conclude the argument for the motion.
So firstly, the topic for our debate is that language is the foundation of cultural identity. We firmly believe that the statement is obviously true. So why is that? Juliana said that Jews who may not speak Hebrew but they can still strongly identify with Jewish culture. But you can't identify with many languages and having the basic grasp of key words and understand deeper your culture, because most of the words, they carry a lot of cultural meanings that cannot be fully translated, right? And we know that Jews, they're mostly religious, and they should be able to participate in basic prayers or blessing in Hebrew, and they need to know the basic of language, right? To understand the culture. Yeah, so another claim that language loss doesn't erase culture. So British government suppressed a lot of languages as Welsh, Scottish, Irish, right? Because they know that they wouldn't just take the land, but they will take words too. They knew the language is what identify their borders and culture as well. So like Victorian reformers said, the Welsh language is a problem and the English language is the solution, because they honestly didn't understand the Welsh culture, and they thought that it's weird to understand. So that's why they tried to suppress the Welsh language. And in our case, in Ukraine, through history, many books were burned. They tried to cancel our language because they knew our language is connected with culture as well. If we will lose our language, we cannot read books, we cannot listen to our music, right? So that's one of the main claims. And yeah, I think about India and Switzerland, they have like these 4 languages that is Swiss German, Swiss French. Maybe they have like this shared language, but also they have, it's mostly their dialect of speaking, right? So we cannot claim that German is the same, Swiss German is the same as German in Germany. So it's really different languages with different culture, and they have their own culture identity with their language.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you very much. That was, again, the standard was absolutely remarkable, and I'm reminded actually that there is a interesting note I was just reading in the chat about colonization, and of course the English are famously bad at learning languages. This is something that well, I'm interested in language, so but as a country we're not very interested in learning languages, and it's really because we've expected everybody else to learn our language as we've in the 18th and 19th century gone around the world taking over countries and colonizing them. So I think it is our poor language learning skills are a result of that history. Fascinating. Thank you very much to everybody who's spoken. Let's open it out to the floor. Does anybody want to develop any of the points made, or ask questions? Or one of the things that I'm really interested in, I don't know if anybody wants to speak about this, is the way that your views of the Russian language have changed as a result of the last few years. Do you feel differently about Russian as a language, or not? David, go, and then Solomon.
Yeah, so yes, it's crucial. I think more than half of people who spoke Russian on daily basis changed it, but there are still people who do speak Russian. Usually it's a mix of Ukrainian and Russian. We have such, when it's Ukrainian words with Russian words, you never know. It's not really one clear. But I think maybe we were thinking that, maybe now it's fine. Throughout history, they tried to take us over, then they did. Maybe now, it's enough for them, So maybe we're friends and stuff, but, it doesn't look like it is. So yeah, I think it only would get worse.
Someone's at the front door.
Thank you very much, David. Solomon, to you, please.
Yeah, I personally believe that in case these Russian Ukrainian languages is the greatest example why language matter, because as we know the Russian, like, I can't say that it's nation but terroristic state which they was like through this foundation. It was built on the lie, and actually they use the language as a tool and the most powerful weapon, because nobody expected that the culture that is so, and the language, and they are like some people and Russian as well are saying that it's not political, but we all know that it is political, because then the language is something that is in our daily life, and that we use. And as we like already said, languages have specific meaning of each words, and it's like a bit change reality. And in case this Russian words, they like, I can say that they have very unique language, because they yes, we all something take from some other language and so on, and it's a normal thing. But in case it's Russian, they just try to they try to deny that Ukrainian nation and Ukrainian language exists and Ukrainian culture exists, and they use that Russian language. Um, they use it like a Russian language. We have like we speak, for example, some people Ukrainians speak, and they use it like they are the same culture, but we are not, and that's why it's so important. Because in our case, it's like Russian is not international language, and it's a language terroristic state, and we like I believe we should not use it at all. And I believe that this language should be just like eliminating the world because it's like it's represent the terroristic actions and so on, and it's like it's built on propaganda, it's built on censorship and so on. That's what it is. And then we all understand that it was like intensely made, historically developed, that some Ukrainians speak Russian, but we can change it and we should change it because that's what like Russian and politician and they all use. So I believe so that's very important, just to do not speak and don't say that it's not a part of culture, but because it is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Selena. That was wonderfully expressed. Yulia, to you, and then on to David again.
Yeah, I also think that like my impression of Russian language changed, especially when I moved abroad and I started like speaking Ukrainian with my friends. But at first, when you go somewhere like in like public places and you hear someone speaking Russian, it's like like in somewhere in my mind, I understand that like it's a chance of 99% that it's someone from Ukraine, but it's still like making me feel like scared that it may be a Russian person, and I cannot like check it by sure, just because like Ukrainians and Russians speak Russian, so like you cannot be sure what kind of nationality is a person you're speaking to. So I guess it's really important that you speak your like native language, just to like protect you from being mistaken to be a Russian.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lovely. David, to you.
Yeah, so if we take a look at Europe overall, Europeans fought each other for decades. And if we take Switzerland, for example, some people speak German, some people speak Swiss, some people speak Italian. That's absolutely fine with them, even though they fought each other, they killed each other some time ago. So I don't think it's something wrong with the language, but with who kind of owns it and who relates to the language. So I think it might be fine in some far future, but now it's not really.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Dariana, to you, please.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm alone in this on my side. I am myself, I do speak Russian with my family. I'm from the very south of Ukraine, so it's in Mykolaiv. It's before the 2014, it was like 4 hours by car, and I was in Crimea already. So it's mostly in my city, everyone spoke Russian, and I feel like it's made right now, everyone makes it very political, but for me, Russian is a language that I used to hear fairy tales when I was a kid. It's a language that my mother used to speak with me to, I don't know, before I go to sleep. It's a language that if I cried, they would support me, my family. So it's not for me. I know how some people feel another way. I totally understand it. When I was in 2023 in western part in Lviv, I had to defend myself because I was on the flea market and I would be speaking Ukrainian with the man there, and he was selling books. They are really old books which I have never seen, have never heard about, never talk about it in school. And he asked me where I'm from. I said I'm from Mykolaiv, but we have two Mykolaivs under in the western part, it's a small village, and the big city in the south. He thought I'm from western part. I said, no, I'm from the south. And he started talking to me like, even though I was speaking Ukrainian with him, he was like, oh, you thought that western part will be, the war will come to the western part and not to the southern part. You probably feel sorry that it is in your part, like, and he was making me political. Even though I was speaking Ukrainian with him, he have not heard me speaking Russian, and I feel like we just influence but what we hear from the Russian politicians, and because we hear like they kind of come to save the Russian speaking Ukrainians, and that's why the war started. I feel like it made us hear it and make against each other. So right now it's the huge conflict in Ukraine between Ukrainian speaking and Russian speaking, even though it was not like that before. It's not even, I not even feel comfortable right now if I'm in Ukraine speaking Russian, even though I'm not less Ukrainian as other Ukrainian speaking Ukrainian. I'm not less Ukrainian. I do support Ukraine. I know Ukrainian history very well. I read the books, even though I speak Russian at home. So I'm on the other side of the road. I'm not saying that this is not important. That our history. I know that our history was to defend this language, and it was put down each year through centuries and centuries. But for me, I'm a human being, and I know this language because my mother taught me this language, not because I know it's not the history is not what I learned first. I learned the language first, and I never had about Ukrainian speaking Russian abroad. I've never ever mistook Ukrainian Russian and Russian. You can hear the difference like so clearly. Even though I heard Russian speaking Russian, I heard Ukrainian speaking Russian, not even a chance they mistook them. They are so different. And yeah, you could never if there is Russian and then sure it's clearly it's Ukrainian. No chance that you will mistake it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating, really fascinating. I could listen all day. I just noticed the time. I'm going to have the final vote, but I would like to give Uliana, Mary, and Salome a chance to continue. But I do understand some of you will have to go, and that's absolutely fine. But I'd love to hear your final points. So let's have the final vote. I'll launch that. Yulia's coming back, and let's just have those final points. So I can't remember who was going to speak, who put their hand up first. Actually, I think it might have been Solomia, possibly.
Uliana.
Uliana, was it? Thank you very much, Ira. Thank you. Uliana, to you first, and then Solomia, and then David. I think you maybe had something else as well.
Actually,
Uliana,
I
go
was just, it wasn't like a big point, but I'm completely agree with Diana because my grandparents and the grandparents of my parents, well, it's a long history. They speak in Russian, we all speak in Russian, but that's not making me a Russian person. We still have in our family Ukrainian values, Ukrainian views. We're still fighting for our freedom, and we would like to have a freedom from Russia, obviously. So yeah, I completely agree with that. And the way how some Ukrainians tell me that you should speak in Ukrainian because you are Ukrainian, it's the wrong point of view. It's not make me someone else. That's just me, a human. And I believe that it's not foundation. It's not because of language, you cannot say that you are someone else. Just
Excellent. Thank you very much. Lovely. I think actually it was Mary. You were next, and then Solomia. So we'll go Mary and Solomia, and then I think we'll round it up. While you're speaking, Mary, I'm just going to show the the results of the poll as well. So on
Yeah,
again.
I just wanted to support Juliana because, you know, some part of our Ukrainian population spoke Russian, but after Russian invasion, they switched to Ukrainian. But the question is, were they really Russian? Did they identify themselves as Russian? I think no, they were still being Ukrainian because this is our culture, our country, and we're Ukrainians. And we're not saying that language is not important and it's not a part of our culture, but it's not. But it isn't really the foundation of cultural identity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Kate, and if you do need to go, I absolutely understand. But if you're able to stay for another couple of minutes just to hear the last couple of points, I think that would be great. We're going to go to Solomia and then David. Solomia next, please.
Yeah, I wanted to say like that I don't tolerate speaking Russian in any cases, but I never think that Ukrainian people who speak Russian support Russian. No, but we should understand that in the past, then Russian just started to trying to eliminate Ukraine, let's say. They they wanted to do this. They wanted to make like Russian Ukrainian marriage and so on, just to mix. And then we have Ukrainian and Russian. Always Russian dominate because of the government policy. And other fact that we were under Russian government for a long time, they was saying that then we have Ukrainian and Russian. Russian gives you more opportunities because you under Russian government. That's obviously, but the thing that now it's easier to continue speak Russian and saying that it's your mother tongue. But you know, we should understand that that now it's a time of changes, and we should not give these tools to Russians because they try to separate us. They try to separate Ukrainians. They try to make a conflict inside of the country, and we should not tolerate that and help. We should not speak Russian because Russian is directly from the Russian. And yeah, there is the difference, but it doesn't mean anything because it was the part of the strategy. It's a part of strategy, and then you speak Russian, you can you just not intensely, but you help them to do this, and then you give them more opportunities just to we should for all the time we feel like we less important, that our culture less important because always Russian dominate. And now then we choose Russian as a because it's like it's long time then we speak this, but it was another conditions. Now we have another change. We have independent Ukraine, and you can choose like many other language. It's not a problem, but not Russian because it's a terroristic state and terroristic language, and we can't just make wider the world, like because Russian world is sense of death, is sense of torture and so on, and many Ukrainians just died for a chance to speak Ukrainian, and then we choose Russian. We extend Russian speech. Speaking.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You made a really important point. David, final point, and then I'll just wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, so Ukraine is basically divided into Ukrainian speaking and for Ukrainian speaking and Russian speaking, who, I'm from east of Ukraine. I do speak Russian since, I was born. So, but I live now at the West, so I feel this, difference in how people think. Because if we will look at, I don't know, people who grew up in Soviet Union, they even learn different history. So my grandma, she knows different history, that Soviets one Nazi Germany by themselves. You know, it's different and it's usually not true. So that's, I think we just didn't have time to, you know, to get together and say, okay, multicultural, that's fine as well. Like if we take Poland, they have same history, they have some language. Fine, no one can divide them, you know, but in Ukraine, we just didn't have that much time being independent to kind of form, because we need like 200 years to form a nation properly. And how much time did we have? You know, 30 years. So, you know, fighting each other, it would be, but I think we should come to, you know, some kind of decision and say, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Honestly, I thought this would be a good debate. The only one I think might be as interesting is obviously the pineapple on pizza one. That's going to divide people just as much. But this was one of those debates where really, although it's set up as a for and against, really it's an opportunity to talk about a really important, fascinating subject and to share views. And what was wonderful there was that even when you were disagreeing with each other, the respect that you showed to each other and to people who had slightly different views was fantastic. And that is the key thing that we learn when we debate. We learn to listen, and we learn from other people. So I really enjoyed the way you debated that and the respectful way that you presented your views, but listened to the views of others. So that was really special. So thank you. Juliana, I'm going to give you the last say. Go on, you say the final thing, but
It's
really
a question. It's actually
Go
a
on.
question for you. If you could vote, you would support or would you be on
Oh,
opposition side?
okay. That's a really difficult question. I am interested in language. I always have been, and I think that it is I think it is a crucial part of the way we express a cultural identity. Although I was really persuaded actually today by the arguments that suggested that there are other ways of expressing that culture, and you guys are in a position where this question of language is so politically charged at the moment that it's not something that as an English person, English speaker, I've ever really had to deal with, because my language has never been challenged in the way that yours has. So I'm very reluctant to give a view, because I think I feel that you are in a much better position than me to judge on this actually. So I just really enjoyed listening to it. I think what I might do, I might get the recording and I'll ask Julia if she'll put it on around for more people to see. More people should see the quality of the debate that we've just seen. It was amazing. So I don't know. I avoided the question like a politician, Juliana. I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that. I think I would probably vote for, but I was very persuaded by the votes against. Anyway, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. It was really fascinating, genuinely. Thank you. Have a good week. Stay safe, and
You
see you
too.
next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye everybody. Bye bye.